So this is it. This is the mystery of death unveiled. We got somebody who goes through the dying process, lucid, and takes notes about every part of it. So you're going to know exactly what it's like for you.
And this is, in some ways, like a near-death experience. But most people, as far as I understand it, who have an NDE have no idea it's about to happen. You know, when they wake up in the morning, they don't know, this afternoon I'm going to have an NDE. But Swedenborg was told, you're going to go through this process, and I'm going to keep some of your faculties online so that you can write about it.
I think you end up with this incredibly clear, incredibly precise description of the thing we're all headed toward. And as a bonus, in this episode, everybody's going to find out exactly why this channel is called Off the Left Eye. All right, Swedenborg in Life. What's going on, everyone? Thanks for watching. This is Dr. Jonathan Rose.
Hey.
This is Curtis Childs. Join, become a member if you're not already. Thank you, members, for supporting our channel. So here we're going to take a look at a travelogue, a live blog of what it's like to die.
Crazy, right?
Totally, and so illuminating about so many facets of not just death but life.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
That's just like the Swedenborg experience. As soon as you get into a bit, it explains all these other things. It's like one thread in the tapestry of...
The rich tapestry of life.
As you mentioned before, or of death in this case. As you mentioned before, Swedenborg knew this was coming and was prepared for it. And that's an important part of actually his whole spiritual thing. So this is his account in Heaven and Hell. There's actually two accounts of this. One written in 1758, the other in 1749. Is that right? Secrets of Heaven.
Correct.
1?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the original experience, he writes about in his Spiritual Experiences, which was a journal of experiences that he was having, and he dates it. And it happens on March 1st of 1748. And so we have actually three written accounts, two of them published, about this with slightly different details in each one, which is interesting.
When were you going to tell me about that third one? You're just going to embarrass me on the air. That's great. I didn't know that this was an SE entry. Okay, so there you go. We're going to read the two published experiences.
It's amazing that we have a date for it. I don't know, but it happens early.
Early squirrely.
Like one of the first, not the first thing, but one of the first things he needed to go through was, look, I need you to understand what dying is like. So let's go through that now. And when he publishes it in 1749, it's right within a couple of hundred numbers of when he starts the book. I mean, it's early. It's at the end of the second chapter or something like that, I think.
So it's important. This is important. This is how it goes. Heaven and Hell, 448. I have not only been told how the awakening happens, meaning the awakening after your body dies, I have been shown by first-hand experience. The actual experience happened to me so that I could have a full knowledge of how it occurs.
Full knowledge.
I think this is sort of an enlightenment guy thing where you say,
yes,
I'm not just making this up, I saw it, and this is empirical, and that's good.
That's right, because there'd been a tradition going back for hundreds or even thousands of years that the most important thing was tradition. What did Aristotle say? What did some other wise person in the past say? And in the Enlightenment, there was more of an emphasis on, well, no, but I actually dissected the human body, and Aristotle wasn't right about what was in there. You know, so experience was kind of on the ascendancy, and a very important part of what Swedenborg went through.
And fascinating that we were talking, was it last episode or 2 episodes ago, about how Swedenborg had this incredible task that he was given. And he said he was given it by Jesus Christ, who he believed to be the God of everything, said, I'm gonna show you things that you're gonna like tell the world this brand new supercharged revelation that's never had before. And so much of that was, you have to see how this works for yourself. What was the other thing? Weren't we just talking about some other thing where he had to go through it himself in order to get it?
Yes, and he will say again and again, because I think some people get misled on this point, that they think that Swedenborg is telling them, you have to believe this. And I never hear Swedenborg saying, you have to believe this. What he says is, I was thoroughly convinced by all these experiences that I have. And then he'll say, often he'll say, this is something that you can look in your own thoughts and feelings. You can actually see the evidence of this.
So so Swedenborg, in the position of revelator, he had to have this as firsthand knowledge.
Yeah.
It had to be something that he knew was real, not just that he heard was real. Okay, this is moving on. Heaven and Hell 449. However, my deeper life and thought remained intact, so that I could perceive and retain what was happening to me and what does happen to people who are being awakened from death.
And I'm suddenly thinking about the title of Heaven and Hell, because doesn't it say from things heard and seen? Like a number of his titles say that right in the title. Heaven and Hell, this is not conjecture, this is not wild fantasy or work of fiction or something. This is from things heard and seen. So it's right on the title page.
They made a Netflix movie called From Things Heard and Seen.
That's right.
Which was about, well, I mean, they pulled that out of Swedenborg's book. We did a react to it on this channel.
Yeah, that's right.
It's because, that was his tagline.
That was his tagline.
Man, I'm not sitting in my chair and like thinking through things and I read C.S. Lewis. I know C.S. Lewis wasn't out back then, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying, I was in there and I did it. So now what we're going to get is this is a play-by-play of the final transition for the human body to stop being the thing that's alive and for the human spirit to get separated from that. This is what we all go through when we're dying.
And I'm surprised more people don't know about his account, because isn't this something that everybody's concerned about and interested in? You know, like, well, wait, what is it like? People who've had an NDE know what it's like because they've been through it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them lose their fear of dying when they go through that. But everybody else, unless we read those accounts, like, I don't know what it's going to be like. What's it going to be like?
Yes.
Does it hurt? Is it bad? Is it just like darkness falling over you? Or,
right.
You know, what is it?
So this is what he says. When someone's body can no longer perform its functions in the natural world in response to the thoughts and affections of its spirit, which it derives from the spiritual world, then we say that the individual has died.
That's interesting, because there wasn't that same level of debate about what is the moment of death. Like, are you brain dead or are you dead or mostly dead, you know, as Princess Bride says.
I was going to say, yep. Inconceivable. Well, how about that for a definition of death?
Yes, when your body is no longer capable of corresponding to the thoughts and feelings that you're having. So it's not that you're not having thoughts and feelings, it's just that the physical plumbing is worn out. You know, the physical instrument, it's kind of it's a design feature. It seems like that the body just wears out and dies at some point.
Yeah, well, it's just obvious to our viewers.
Yes, that's right.
This wearing out.
A chilling illustration right before you.
Undeniably. So you are like a two-part system here. You've got the thoughts and affections of your spirit, which it would be the same thing in Swedenborg as your consciousness. So the conscious part of
that's right. Yeah.
is spiritual, and it's sitting there, and it's already spiritual, and it's already never going to die. It's just there. However, you got this physical robot that those impulses and thoughts are driving around. Death is when that thing can no longer accept commands from the mothership.
Yeah.
Which is your consciousness.
And those things are present in every cell of the body. You know, often people wondered, where is the soul? Is it in the pineal gland or some other place?
Yeah.
But Swedenborg says it's in, if your cell is alive, if any cell in your body is alive, it's in there. It's in your whole organism.
Dude, so we got a definition of life, which is life is something which is directly responsive to, what did he say? Thoughts and affections of a spirit. Because I read this book that's called What is Life? And it wasn't like, oh, what's the meaning of life? It's literally, what is life?
What is it? Yeah.
And there's not a great consensus. There's not a clean, simple definition of what life is. If you look it up on the line or in like the big book or something of encyclopedia, it will say, well, here's a bunch of things. It's made of cells. It reproduces. It can like have movement. Like it's just a laundry list of stuff because there's no like, here's the life particle.
And you don't even have to go to a big book, because anybody who's had houseplants knows whether you're wondering all the time, is that thing dead? Is that thing still alive? What's going on in there?
So what he would say is, what's the difference between living and non-living matter? Living matter has a direct responsiveness to the thoughts and intentions of some spirit which lives in the spiritual world.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay. So the individual has died.
So there's learning right there.
The
Right?
more you know.
Yeah.
This happens when the lungs' breathing and the heart's systolic motion have ceased.
And it's definitely, I'm no medical doctor or whatever, but it does seem like those are the last systems to go. If you've still got a heartbeat going on, or they're still breathing. And so it's interesting that Swedenborg brings it all down to if those two can still carry that, even, your shoulder, your leg, some other part of you may not be functioning anymore. But if those are still happening, then there's still some connection.
And no offense.
And when those stop, then it's lost.
To the shoulder fans.
No.
But it's not just by an accident. He said, just the heart and the lungs. The heart and the lungs are central to Swedenborg's mythology.
Yes, right.
That he talks about you die when your body can't respond to the thoughts and affections of your spirit. Well, the thoughts of your spirit have a direct impact on your lungs.
That's right.
The affections of your spirit have a direct impact on your heart.
That's right.
So those two things ceasing, which goes back to this greater whole tapestry of like love and wisdom are the primary things in the universe. There's the goodness and truth are the things that emanate out of God. Those two things, everything goes back to those two things. That's everywhere in Swedenborg's picture of the world.
That's right. And the lung part supplies consciousness. He talks about when somebody's unconscious or knocked unconscious, let's say, and their heart is beating, or let's say if you get all the wind knocked out of you, as people say, that the heart is still beating, but you don't have as much consciousness without the lung piece. And he also says that that's something about what's going on in the womb, that you have a heartbeat, but the mother's body is doing the respiration for you, so that level of consciousness is not the same as it is after you're born and you start to breathe on your own.
Help, I can't calm my thoughts down. What are you going to tell me to do? Here's a breathing exercise.
That's right.
Breathe in, 2, 3. Right? Traditions all over the world recognize breathing and
There's
thought
a connection
go
between
together.
breathing and thought. That's right. And everybody who has a heart has felt it sort of race sometimes, or get excited, it responds to things, or feels stressed, or
if one saw there's a new episode of Swedenborg and Life out, bum 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 bum. Which could be abject terror for all we know. The person, though, has not died at all. We are only separated from the physical nature that was useful to us in the world. The essential person is actually still alive.
I got an analogy of this a while ago in my mind, of thinking that that you keep going on the highway. This is a modern sort of analogy, but you keep going on the highway. Your consciousness keeps going on the highway. You see your body exit. Like that's the experience. You've been your body.
Yeah.
And then at some point you realize, I had an experience once on I-95. Not a very pleasant experience, but we were driving back, and all of a sudden I saw a wheel rolling ahead of the vehicle. This was an old VW bus, and a wheel is rolling down the highway. And then I realized, that's my wheel. Like that was one of the wheels of the car that I was driving.
Some slob lost his wheel.
Lost a wheel.
But whoa.
Well, it's sort of like that. You're going to see your body takes an exit. But in other words, you don't even really die. Your consciousness is indestructible.
Yeah.
That consciousness keeps going. You just see the body exit at some point.
A lot of people that have a near-death experience or something, they report having a hard time initially recognizing their own body.
Yeah. And they're often out of there. They're watching from some distance or something.
What's that thing? It's the body's great, but it's just so obvious, it becomes so obvious it's not you. It's not you, it's just it's a thing that's useful.
And if you've ever seen a dead body, it really is different than the living person. Like something has definitely left.
Or house plant.
It just looks different. And even the plants. Yeah,
last year we had these 2 cypress trees and we didn't water them when it got to be a drought. They're not coming back. And this year you can tell by the way the needles are drying out at the top of one of them, it's not coming back. And you should have watered it. Sorry. After this separation, our spirit stays in the body briefly. But not after the complete stoppage of the heart, which varies depending on the cause of death. In some cases, the motion of the heart continues for quite a while, and in others, it does not. The moment it does stop, we are awakened, but this is done by the Lord alone. You know what I think? So he's saying that the body, the spirit's kind of hovering around. But you know what happens now? Now we have all these near-death experiences all the time. You know what happens now is somebody dies, and then a little while later, clear.
Yeah.
And what is that? Clear. They shock you. That gets your heart going again.
Yeah.
Or they do
That's
CPR on you. What's that do? It gets your heart going again.
Gets your heart going
So
again.
somehow,
boom, they come back in.
You're not that far gone that then it can come back in.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting, that sense of the spirit hovering around in the body for a while. And so from anybody's standpoint who didn't have a monitor on you or something, you might think, no, I think they're gone.
Yeah.
But if there's any little motion, it's like that spirit hangs around with any little motion there.
So this is what it is to be awakened. He says, being awakened means having our spirit led out of our body and into the spiritual world, which is commonly called resurrection. The reason our spirit is not separated from our body until the motion of the heart has stopped is that the heart answers to affection, an attribute of love, which is our essential life, since all of us derive our vital warmth from love. Consequently, as long as this union lasts, there is a responsiveness, and therefore the life of the spirit is still in the body.
Yeah, there's some correspondence in there, and so the love is keeping it going, and that is a cool image of how as the body shuts down, the love is that central. It's the last thing. It's the real you.
Yeah.
That's the last thing to go.
Well, and that goes along with all throughout Swedenborg's recorded spiritual experiences. He's saying, listen, what you love makes you who you are.
Yeah.
You got to understand. You've got a mind, and it can know things, and you can believe certain things, but it'll always get pulled back to what you love. If you want to look at what kind of life are you going to have in the afterlife, look at what you love. That makes you who you are. And here he's saying the thing that determines are you still connected to this body or not is the love correspondence.
The love connection, yeah.
Okay, now we're going to get a little bit into like how it feels, what the experience of it is actually like. I was brought into a state in which my physical senses were inoperative, very much then like the state of people who are dying.
Okay, physical senses of just the actual senses in the body.
Can't see
have
anything.
shut down. Not hearing, I'm not seeing. Yep.
And check this out. I noticed that my physical breathing was almost suspended, with a deeper breathing, a breathing of the spirit, continuing along with a very slight and silent physical one. Don't you think of, if there's a spirit, you might see it in a movie, like, yes, it has the same shape as a person. Like, it's the same actor gets up and says...
That's right. But they just do that shadowy effect where you can see through them.
You don't think of, the spirit has lungs? The spirit has, like airbags inside itself that it's doing, breathing some other, like, spiritual oxygen. But this is a feature of how Swedenborg describes the spirit, is that everything the physical body has, the spirit has a spiritual version of that. So here, when his breathing is dialing as back far as it can to keep his body alive while he goes through this, the thing he feels is the breathing of his spirit. He starts to feel those lungs going because it's starting to stir, and where it is in the spiritual world, it's not oxygen there, it's something else, but it needs to breathe all the same.
In one of the Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians 15, but I forget right now, where it says that there's a spiritual body. There's a spiritual body and a physical body.
Yeah.
And so he's the spiritual body. It's not physical. It's made of spiritual substance, but it has its, as you're saying, has its own breathing. So his physical senses are shut down. Now he's starting to sense in his spiritual body. He's feeling the breathing of his spiritual body, which is cool.
Another place where this happens is meditation. Because people will say, if you want to have some kind of transcendent experience, often what people will do is to start to meditate. And what they do when they meditate is they're quieting down the physical senses. Or this is why if you're in a sensory deprivation tank, sometimes people start to hallucinate. They call it hallucinate. Because
that's right, because you got body temperature water that you're in, so you're not feeling your skin in the same way, and you're not, and it's quiet, and then
it's all sitting right there. Your spirit has got its own inputs from the spiritual world, and as soon as it's like how you can't see stars at night because there's so many lights in the city, light pollution. If you move away from that, then you can see all these things in the sky
There's a ton up
that you
there.
couldn't see before. It's kind of like you've got your spirit's like there. There's just so much static from the physical, but once that's quieted down, you start to perceive it.
I think a lot of people, and Swedenborg even talks about this, that people think, well, I wouldn't be able to see in that world. Like this is partly that idea that you would rise up out of your grave eventually, because they think, well, I don't have eyes, I don't have ears in that world. Like how would I see or hear anything or interact with anybody in that world, because my senses are in my physical body. And this is a big thing that Swedenborg's trying to get across, is like, no, yes, you have apparatus in your physical body, but that's being fed by the spirit. It's actually the spirit that sees through your physical eyes and all that. And so there's a complete body already there in greater perfection than your physical form. And he's talking about that seamless transition where, oh, now I'm feeling myself breathing in this other body.
The spiritual body you needed was there all along.
Yeah.
Like the ruby slippers. And I don't know. I was enabled to perceive and even to feel that there was a pull, a kind of drawing out of the deeper levels of my mind and therefore of my spirit from my body. And I was told that this was being done by the Lord and is what brings about our resurrection.
Wow, now that's amazing. I have a couple things I want to say about that. One is rather silly, which is that when I've moved out of house, like I've lived in a house for 11 years at one point and then sold the house. And as I was moving, I almost felt like my spirit was being pulled out, like I was attached to every baseboard I'd worked on and all the little, every little piece of it, like pulling my spirit out of that. I wonder if it feels like that. And the other thing I wanted to say is that near-death experiences talk about this, don't they? This kind of a suction, you find yourself moving through this tunnel or something, that there's that drawing that pulls you. What a connection your spirit has had with your body for so long. And then it gets peeled off.
And it's interesting, he says, the deeper levels of my mind and therefore my spirit from my body. So you could even ditch the term spirit if you don't like that. You could just say mind.
Mind.
But the difference between how we normally think of mind, which is just this formless mass of information, is that your mind has a form. Your mind has a body, just like your body is a body.
Yes. Yeah.
Your mind has
has eyes,
and
your mind has ears.
There's a spiritual world, which is the same thing as saying it's the world of the mind. It's not just a world you just imagine. It's real and it has its own laws and it's a shared reality with other people and all that. But in some ways, it's the world of the mind. The mind is there. That's kind of cool. I just want to note, we're switching books here. Because as we said before, he talks about this in Heaven and Hell, which is what we've been reading. He gives a very similar account of this experience in Secrets of Heaven.
That's right.
They both follow the same storyline, but there's cool details in each one.
That's right.
That are different than the others. So what I want to do is move over here and read this out of Secrets of Heaven 179.
Great.
It says, as soon as the internal organs of the body grow cold, oh, this is so wild, our living substances, wherever they are located, are separated out. This would happen even if they were lost in the 1,000 interlinking passages of a labyrinth. The Lord's mercy, which I had already experienced as a living and powerful pull, is so strong that it could not leave any living element behind.
I love that. And I think one of the reasons that that when you have violence against Jews and they're very upset about it, it's because there's this belief that the body has to be whole. That's why the bombing is so horrific for them, because they believe that the body has to be together. It all has to be together. What's merciful about this teaching is that, no, it doesn't matter if you're blown into 1,000 pieces. That'll all get pulled. That doesn't stop the divine from doing its thing. It's going to pull all those things together and you'll be fine. You'll transition.
Swedenborg talks about it a lot. He'll talk about Christians that have a belief that at the last day there's a resurrection and your body needs to be reassembled and come up out of the grave.
That's right.
There's at least three things in here that I think are quite remarkable and worth talking about. One is that the living substances, wherever they are located, are separated out. because Swedenborg goes to great lengths, and we've gone to great lengths on this show to say, look, the physical and the spiritual are different dimensions.
Yes.
It's not, you cannot take a spaceship and just, that's it, we're just flying as fast as we can.
We'll let you know when we get there.
We're going to end up in the spiritual world, or even probably that you could like get a microscope or a wormhole or something where you would somehow, you can't get there from here. They're totally separate. However, they are connected in a very significant way. So much so that it's not just like, all right, the body rolls off like a wheel and it doesn't matter. The substances, the living substances, so that your spirit body has to be separated by some process from your physical body. The two are connected across dimensions, and they need to be separated out.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, that is crazy. And it makes me think about what Swedenborg says about, like, he sometimes differentiates between matter and substance, which is interesting because it sounds like the same thing.
Okay.
But substance, it comes from a Latin meaning it's existing underneath. It's sort of behind. So he speaks about spiritual substance, and so that's interacting with this physical matter, and then you need to get the living bit of that out. So it gets anything living gets sort of hoovered up, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. So, and you think about it like we once did a short video on this channel where we had iron filings and then sand, and we mixed those all together, and it's like just this one mass that if somebody said you can have $1 million once you completely separate these two, I don't want that $1 million. I don't want $1 million. It's not worth it. However, we got a magnet, and a strong magnet passed that above it, and separates everything out. So it's like the Lord's mercy, which is the Lord's love for each of us in a position of need. It's got like a Dr. Jonathan Rose magnet. The Lord has that where he can pull everything that's you out of there. And he has that for each individual person.
Amazing.
That can't leave anything living behind. That pull that you feel, that's the Lord. That's the Lord's mercy.
Yeah. And so people have that experience in the tunnel of being drawn, and then they, lo and behold, at the end of the tunnel, they see this being of unconditional love and so on. But I don't know if they associate those two things. And yet what that is the divine love pulling you from one world into the next.
Which is not such an alien concept, because here we have something that does that, which is called gravity. And pretty much everything you've ever interacted with is affected not only by the Earth's gravity, but by the sun's gravity. Because that's the only reason why Earth stays in the habitable zone, is the sun has this gravity that the solar system revolves literally around it. In the world so that's the physical world. In the world of the mind, which is the spiritual world, it's not gravity as a love that does that. So that pull you feel on you is literally the Lord's love for you. The Lord can love you a ton in this world, and does. It can never drag you across the room. No, your wife or your kids or anybody can love you so much, they just sitting there. Everyone can be sitting there loving you. It will not scoot you an inch.
No,
that's not true in the spiritual world. In the world of the mind, love actually pulls people together, and then God's love for you really pulls you. That's the magnet. Is literally love itself.
Yeah, and I like the idea that it's attraction. People say about the 12-step programs that it's attraction, not promotion. It's the idea that it's more, I see this in the way that Jesus was in the New Testament, that he's drawing people. And he says that, if I'm lifted up, I'll draw all people to myself. It's attractive. It's not, I'm going to come out and make you different. I'm going to push you around or get you to do what I want. No, it's just like, don't you want to come here? You know?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a lot in there. Can you, like, give me the quick version? What would the quick version be? Boom, boom, boom. What happens when you die?
Okay, so there's a process that everybody goes through when they die. And this is something that the famous scientist Emanuel Swedenborg went through in the mid-1700s and recorded meticulously in his journal, because his brain was still intact enough to see it. So what happens is your physical senses start to shut down. And from that, you begin to become aware of the spirit inside you, which is always there. You just can't sense it because there's so much going on in the physical world. So from there, you begin to notice the breathing of your spirit, the heartbeat of your spirit, and you actually feel this pull where your spirit, which is your consciousness, and your body, which is the physical sort of servant of your consciousness, they separate out and you get pulled off into the spiritual world. What you don't realize initially is that very thing that's pulling you is God's love, like a tractor beam magnet gravity well, pulling you out because it's saying, hey, you're so great. Come here, let's start the real phase of life, which is spiritual. Do you want to know the story of how this show came to be? Well, it's simple. People like you decided to donate to the not-for-profit Swedenborg Foundation so we could make this show. If you want to keep this show going, there's a link in the description. Click that thing, make a donation. Any size helps. It makes programming like this that exists nowhere else possible. Thank you. So the second phase of the dying process is when you start to meet beings on the other side.
So you don't just get sort of sucked into the void.
You don't. At this point, it's all been between you and the divine pull of God's mercy. But now you start to meet people or meet something, and they have this important and very technical role in what happens to you next.
So probably a welcome, probably involves a wreath of some kind. Or
so the first, you get to hang out with the very highest or deepest, as Swedenborg would say, angels in heaven. This is in Heaven and Hell 449. At first then, a connection was established between my heartbeat, which at this point is the heartbeat of his spirit, because his body,
that's right,
he's out of there, and the heavenly kingdom, because that kingdom corresponds to the human heart. I also saw angels from that kingdom, some at a distance, but two sitting close to my head. The effect was to take away all my own affection, but to leave me in possession of thought and perception.
So all his own sort of, it sounds like his own kind of normal emotional state was overridden.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting that they have the capability to do that.
Yeah.
They can shut off your I know you do your normal emotional thing where this time of day you feel hopeful that this and that, and the other time of day you feel depressed because of what. We're not doing that right now. Shut off your normal emotions. And also the two angels, isn't there two angels when Jesus is resurrected? Wasn't there, at least in one of the Gospels, there's one at the foot and one at the head or something like that. Yeah, that's cool.
So he uses a few terms here that if you're not familiar with Swedenborg, might fly past you. Which one, he says, the heavenly kingdom.
Yes.
And you might just think, that he's talking about
that's
heaven. It's heaven. But actually, there's two parts to heaven. At the beginning of the episode, we were saying that when you're dying, the big split between your spirit and your body comes with a split with the lungs and the split with the heart.
Yes.
It's because there's these two major components of reality, which is love and wisdom. Those two are the things that emanate out from God. And so heaven, which is the sort of the first reception of God's nature, has what he calls the heavenly kingdom and the spiritual kingdom. And if I was to summarize it, the heavenly kingdom are angels who are people who have died and are in the afterlife who are like heart-centered. They're love-centered.
Yeah.
And then the spiritual kingdom is people who are mind-centered.
Yeah.
Who are concepts and thought-centered. So for Swedenborg, in this first phase, these are the love people that are close to him here.
And it's amazing to think about this giant heaven, with all these. He says that a fair number of the people who populate the heavenly kingdom are little children who died as children, and especially back in the day when there was so much infant mortality, there was a huge number. There's tons and tons of angels all being hooked up to just your heartbeat, and so the greeting is not one of who are you? What are you doing? It's not like you encounter the guard or something.
Yeah.
Right. Show me some ID. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
No, it's absolute love. The highest kind of love is what greets you. And I don't think this was just for Swedenborg. I think the whole point of this story was that this is what everybody gets. This is the reception that everybody gets.
For sure. And if you were just going to make this up, if you were just going to say, I'm going to tell people that I died and went to heaven, and I'm going to tell people what it's like so that I can sell a book or something.
Yeah, right.
What you would not put in there is that the angels of the heavenly kingdom took away all my feelings but left me with my thoughts.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre,
It's an odd little
technical
detail. I know. Like,
but you're
what?
going to see this is really important. It's functionally, it's kind of like a clean room. It's like you normally have your shoes. If you come in here, you have to put these little booties over your shoes because
right.
you can't be tracking contaminants into here.
That's right.
What
Because we're creating computer chips, or we're doing something that you can't have a piece of dust in here.
In this case, we're resuscitating you into eternal life. There's a reason why that part of you needs to go dormant.
And I love that somebody has control over that.
Yeah.
Because most of the time we're doing our thing and having our experiences, and that somebody's able to just let me take that for you.
Well, I think about it. Yeah, it's like I was just thinking of if a baby's born in the hospital, it's like, okay, there's always doctors and nurses around, and the room is a certain temperature and all. Like, it's all this environment is ready. It's kind of like on the other side, you got this team that's like, all right, you're coming in. We're gonna make sure everything's good for you there.
Yeah.
So now we switch into the other story, the Secrets of Heaven version, and where he's describing the same part of that. He says, heavenly angels were present, occupying the area of my heart, so that I seemed to be at one with them in my heart. We were so close that at last hardly anything of my own remained to me besides the thought and perception that comes with thought. This lasted several hours.
Several hours? Wow. Okay, so for several hours he's just, he's kind of in this deep meditative sounding state of just love where he's one with these highest angels. What a nice way to start your afterlife.
When I read that, I was like, I want to do that. As they would say in 30 Rock, I want to go to there.
Yes, right.
Think about all the weariness you carry in your bones from life.
Oh.
Whoever and wherever you are, they're just this thing that we're going through, which at times is great and at times is not. I want to sit there and have these, I want to be at one with them in my heart and just like, give me a couple hours.
Oh.
Give me a couple hours here. And
just the peace and the
and
love.
But it's not just, that might be nice. I think it's like an acclimation process.
Yeah.
So if you're scuba diving and you say, I just want to go to the surface, you got to stop here.
Yep.
At 35 feet or something for a certain amount of time.
Don't go too fast.
Or if you're like, I want to climb Mount Everest, it's like you have to stay at base camp for a couple of days to get acclimated to the oxygen. There is something, I'm sure, happening within his spirit. Because remember, the Swedenborg spirit, like any of our spirits, is as complicated as the body. So just like with the body, the reason you got to stop, part way up when you're scuba diving is that nitrogen, I forget, needs to work its way out of your blood or into your blood or whatever it needs. There's a million tiny little chemical things happening in there. So it is here, I'm sure, that there is a ton of stuff that in you that needs to change and adapt so you can be ready to start to inhabit heaven, which is a totally different atmosphere and place and space than what you've been used to.
And it's kind of like the near-death experience people describe, because in this world, in this fleshly world, every day on the news you hear about people who are just dying in random ways. I just heard this morning about a firefighter. There's a lot of fires breaking out, and a tree just fell on this young guy and killed him. Well, it's just absolutely random, and it's kind of terrifying to be alive, because you don't know at what moment am I going to, you're going down the highway or whatever it is, and you don't know when this is coming. And the thought that, oh no, there's a whole team that knows you're coming and gets hooked up with you. And we've got you.
Yeah.
We've got you. We've got the most important part of you.
Yep.
We've got your love right here.
And we're going to make sure that you make it through here safe and happy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so you're in a state of peace.
Oh yeah.
I think he describes it in what you're about to read. But yeah, you are not in a state of fear. You're not in your own, whatever reaction you might have been having to the events that led up. Did you hear the tree falling down or whatever it is? You're terrified or something. But then, you're in this peace.
If there's any message that we get from everybody who's had the experience of dying and then coming back to talk about it, I think the take-home message is that life is not nearly as bad as it seems like it is.
Yes.
Life seems worse than it is.
Yes.
Because all these people they are in the worst situations. They're in horrific car accidents.
Terrible.
Mary Neal was like pinned underwater in a kayak.
Yeah, drowning under the water. Yeah, some people are shot. Some people are struck by lightning. Yeah. All these things.
And
Yeah.
to us as an observer, you think like this horrible world that somebody would go through that. But the actual person who's in there, who's right there in that body that you see going through those horrible things, they say, I didn't hurt at all. I wasn't even in there when that happened. Instead, I felt surrounded by, like I was aware of it. I remember Mary Neal in her account saying, oh, she could tell her legs were breaking, but it didn't hurt. And she was surrounded by love, and she was flying out of that and free. So it's like, wait a second. You look around at the state of the world and you say, how can there be a God when all this horrible stuff is happening all the time? But if the thing that we point at is that's the worst thing that can happen, is someone dying in a violent way, if actually the person in there is fine, life is not nearly as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, that's right. And death is not as bad as you think.
In addition to the heavenly angels occupying the region of my heart, there were two angels sitting at my head. I perceive that this is so for everyone, like you were just saying.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he goes on, all the while I remained at one with the heavenly angels, held in a fairly close embrace in the area around my heart, as I perceived and also felt in my pulse.
Interesting. And your heart is not, I mean, you can feel somebody hold you around the waist or grab your arm or, around your neck or something like that. Your heart is usually not something that somebody else actually
it's
holds.
Like, get out of there.
Right.
Maybe one heart surgeon,
Yeah, right.
for like a minute. Yeah.
Right. But this is a beautiful feeling that he's describing, where he's quite closely. What does he say? Something like that. It's like
held in a fairly close embrace in the area around my heart.
Yeah, and so there's room where it's not squeezing. It's not constraining your heart, but it's still. We've got you. We're right here. It's all good.
And so far, it paints this incredible picture of a comforting and loving welcome, which is like great. Everybody deserves that after the trials of life and everything.
And this is not just like the nice people are saying,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is everybody.
Yeah.
This is everybody. This is how everybody's welcome.
Yeah. Everybody gets this welcome, but it's not just like a love fest. There's important technical protective work happening here. The angels that are with you after you die are protecting you as you cross over from any kind of influence of evil or evil spirits. So this is back to heaven and hell. Swedenborg writes this, then the spirits who were around me gradually drew away, thinking that I was dead. It's not the angels that he's talking about, but the spirits. Angel is somebody who's died, who's gone up into heaven, done the process of self-reflection and repentance. You go up to heaven. Spirits are people who are still have not sorted themselves into heaven or hell yet. So you have spirits around you all the time. That's part of why your mind is like it is. Those regular kind of, your sort of secular, normal life, those spirits thought, oh, Swedenborg is dead. I'm leaving him. That's part of what was accomplished in these couple hours where he's being held by the angels. It's like if you're in a really vulnerable point in your life, you're not going to just like turn on the news or something. It's like this is much more, this is core. This is
and there's a fundamental shift that's going on, because you've got angels, then you've got spirits who are close to your mind, and then there's you in this world. Now you're transitioning to the other world, so you're becoming a spirit. So the whole game is changing.
Yes.
And so those spirits like, and they must know the rules, or they get bored, or whatever happens. But it's like, seems like he died, and they split.
That's true. According to Swedenborg, the way that you have consciousness is you have spirits around you that sort of act as channels-ish for this whole spiritual world. But once you're a spirit, you don't need that anymore. So you have to shift all your connections. You've leveled up, so you no longer need those things, those teachers.
And I'm thinking of the analogy. I don't know how it fits, but
no, we don't got to worry about that. Let's just analogize and see what happens.
9 months in the womb, then your situation changes radically the day you're born. You're born. You used to be in one state. Well, is our entire life in this world like the womb? then we're born, and our situation changes when we're, so that it's this major transition. So there was a sort of steady state of like, okay, there's all this growth going on, but you're still in the womb. Oh, now everything's changing. All the rules are changing, and you're shifting. So now you're a child with these other children, and all that going on. So when you cross over, the spirits are like, oh, well, no, they're not in that state anymore. He crossed over, and so they leave. It's interesting.
Well, you don't, if your kid's up at the bus stop, you don't run up and be like, hey, wait, you forgot the placenta.
Yes, right.
Where are you going with that? It's things that you very much needed and couldn't survive without for 9 months. Suddenly, you don't need them anymore.
Now it's gone. Yeah. Different. It's a transition. But a very carefully, beautifully managed transition. That's what's nice. Not random. This is not random.
So the spirits go away thinking that Swedenborg is dead. Then he says, I sensed a sweet odor like that of an embalmed body. For when heavenly angels are present, anything having to do with a corpse smells sweet. When spirits sense this, they cannot come near. This is also how evil spirits are kept away from our spirit when we are being admitted into eternal life.
So strange. But this sweet smell, because it's not the smell of decay or death or something. It's some sweet smell, and yet interesting that the evil spirits can't. You'd think they'd like a nice smell, but they hate it. They don't want to be near that. And so this is a natural protection of just like. And again, doesn't it seem like these higher angels have amazing control of like, I can create a pleasant odor.
Yeah.
And that'll take care of these evil spirits here or whatever. They have amazing control over the process.
But still have to do things through means. Like they have to take these steps in order to keep you safe.
Right.
I think the analogy or the correspondence of, let's say, an operating room holds up, because if you're going to get an operation done on you, there's all these steps taken to make sure at this point there's got to be no germs that get in here.
That's right.
That we're going to have antiseptic around the womb. People are going to be wearing face masks, hair nets, because sure, there's always germs around, and you never really like having them around. But right now, there's got to be none. There's got to be none of those things.
And you just walked in from your car or the barn where you keep horses or whatever, and so you came in from whatever environment.
Yeah.
But we have to purify this. So when you're making your entrance into the operating theater, there's steps that we take. And so they'll put iodine or whatever, that's disinfectant.
So there's evil spirits in the spiritual world that are around, and Swedenborg just says those are people that are mean who then went to the afterlife, and because of what they love, they still are mean. Yeah. That's what an evil spirit is, and you can't have those people around when something like this delicate is going on. So angels make sure that they create the conditions in which that doesn't happen. So then after they're protecting us from evil spirits, there's this mind meld that kind of takes place. This is from Heaven and Hell 449. The angels who were sitting behind my head were silent, simply sharing their thoughts with mine. When these are accepted, meaning the thoughts are accepted by the deceased, the angels know that the person's spirit is ready to be led out of the body. They accomplish this sharing of thoughts by looking into my face. This is actually how thoughts are shared in heaven.
Wow, that's wild, because I think about people on this end. You've got hospice nurses or whoever it is, and they're doing various things, and they think, okay, here's where we are in the process. Here, okay, I expect it's only about half an hour now. All that,
Yep.
Here are angels on the other side who are looking at you in the same way, and it's such a strange detail, but they're looking at your face, and they're projecting a kind of thought. And by the way, it's worth saying that we're so used to movies and shows and everything now where people communicate telepathically, or that you see aliens and they can speak with their minds or whatever. Thank you. Was that a good imitation there? The
amazing technology.
But that idea wasn't around. Like, who communicated telepathically? What are you talking about? That's not in ancient literature. That wasn't a thing. And
so for
here's
Swedenborg
writing about these angels who are just, they're communicating, but it's wordlessly. The idea of wordless communication was not a thing, as far as I know, from that time period. And so this is kind of an amazing detail to think of that being, they're sitting there beaming that in. And when your face, when you receive it, when they can see that their thought is showing up in your face, oh, he's ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're there. Okay. Made a connection. Okay, we got the connection. We're hooked up. Okay, we're hooked up.
So, Harry Potter. Popular or not popular? Harry Potter, the book series.
I would say popular.
Like the biggest thing that's happened in entertainment in the last 50 years.
Massive.
We're close.
Yeah.
Really big. I'm reading it to my daughter right now. So I'm thinking of Harry Potter. And part of me, whenever I'm reading it, is like, how did this take the world by storm so much? And I think part of why it did is, so in Harry Potter, if you're not familiar, there's magic. There's witches and wizards, and there's this whole,
That's right.
Turns out around the world that you and I see, there's also wizards and witches, and they have this whole magic world that we don't know what's going on.
That's right. So, and they have their own school, and their whole,
yes.
Right, they're learning how to do that and all that.
So J.K. Rowling, who made up Harry Potter, she had to think of, how does magic work? Because you have to create this whole, what are the rules of magic? What
are the rules?
And I think
right.
that part of what people find appealing about the stories is there's this world where there's magic, and you have a wand, and you can cast a spell, and there are charms and things, but there's rules to it all. It's not just, we just do magic and it happens. It's you have to say a certain incantation. If you don't get that right, it doesn't work. In order for this charm to work, this ingredient has to be put just right into the...
And people can get better at it.
Yes.
You practice and you get better at it.
And there's certain things that can't... If you see something happening, there's only a few explanations for how that could be done with magic. There's rules to it. Here, you have angels. You'd think angels they're just angels. They just angel everything. No, right. Here there's rules to how it works. Just like here, there's magnetism and gravity and the weak and strong nuclear force. There's rules to how things work. It's the same thing there, because they don't know. They don't just know you're dead because they're just angels and they just know.
Yeah.
They have to do a test. It's a little
That's right.
strep test or something. That's
right.
In the good sense, which is, I need to look at you, and when I can tell my thoughts are being accepted by you, that's when I know.
That's when I know.
And same thing with, how do I even share my thoughts with you? I have to look at your face. That there are rules, which again speaks to the same creator who made this world, which is if I start talking over here, you can't really hear me because I'm not facing this microphone.
Yeah.
There's just rules to how things work.
You can wish it worked, but wishing doesn't make it so. It's there's a technology to it.
So it is. The spiritual world also has rules, and it's the reason why things are the way they are. So I just feel like that's important, and that's cool that he's sharing it here. Secrets of Heaven 173. The angels sitting at my head were completely silent. This is the other account of it. Communicating their thoughts only by the face, so that I felt something like a new face come over me. 2 new faces, in fact, since there were 2 angels. Again, if you're trying to write this to please the masses, you don't write that you had 2 new faces. Steven Spielberg is going to be send this back. Nobody what are you even talking about? Can't you just
we
have
can't depict that on camera.
Something a little more photogenic than this? In fact, since there were 2 angels, when the angels perceive that their faces are being mirrored, they know the person is dead. After recognizing their faces on me, I'm sending you my good angel thoughts, and you're making the same expression I would make. That means I'm in there.
It's like a parent with a child, with those mirror neurons and everything that they've been learning more about, and where when they say, "Oh yes, look, there's empathy there." I'm sad now. The baby's getting that. They're responding. They're having a similar feeling.
Yes. After recognizing their faces on me, they caused certain changes in the area around my mouth, and in this way shared their thoughts with me. I mean, come on, that's Harry Potter.
It is.
It's okay, this is how they're going to share it, and it's not random with Swedenborg. It's not he makes some statement here that he might have just made up because that would be interesting. If you go through the whole 30 volumes that he downloaded or learned from God, he's saying, or through experiences like this, that God was telling him to go and do, The mouth. There's a reason. There's a reason why the mouth
comes up over and over again. Yeah,
and what it means spiritually, and that you could pick apart the physics of why this works. Just like the reason this microphone works has to do with acoustics and electronics and light, and man, do I not know how it works, but it works. Somebody could tell you this is the reason why this works. There's a reason why the angels need to share something with your mouth in order to give you the thoughts.
Yeah, and so one angel is phase one. We got phase one.
Yep.
Then the other one, phase two. We've got phase two. Okay.
You know what?
We're in.
That that room they always show at NASA when the probe lands on the moon. They're like, yeah, you got angels. They're like, all right, we're in. We're in. Oh yeah, he transitioned to the spirit. We're bringing him into heaven. Let's go. Actually, Swedenborg says that the thing that angels are most excited about doing is welcoming people into heaven.
And I loved your analogy, strange as it might sound, of the operating room.
Yeah.
I've been operated on a few times, and there's a great vibe in there to me because everybody's kind of excited. It's not ordinary reality, you know. It's like this is not a normal thing. Mm-hmm. We're getting ready for something very important here, and it's cool, that sense of focus and purpose, and that everything else in the world has been walled off.
Yeah.
Like, no, we don't have windows in here. No, there is not. No, there's not street noise. Cars aren't driving through here or whatever. We're here to do one exact thing.
Yep.
And all these people, they're cleaning everything, and they're going. Some are interacting with the patient, and some are interacting. They're all, you know, it has a similar vibe to me.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like this is the thing. This is the big deal. I was able, so to speak through the area around here he says, to speak through the area around someone else's mouth is common for heavenly angels.
Oh yeah, of course, right.
That's an album title. I was able to perceive their thought speech. So once they'd plugged in, they'd hacked into the mainframe, then he could get what was going on with it.
Then he gets their thoughts, and it's not articulate, even though his mouth is engaged, but it's not coming out in here's a word, here's another word.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, and his mouth is moving, and he's getting that.
One example of the lore, as they would say, of Swedenborg is, and how this fits in with it, is that he talks often about the most ancient people. He says these were people that were on the earth long ago. He doesn't specify how long ago, but he says that this was sort of the original spiritual state of humanity, when people had a pretty direct connection to God. We hadn't really fallen under the sway of self-love or the will to dominate others, the will to enrich ourselves. So people lived in simple, smaller communities. They didn't need to have walls in cities. And one thing he said is that there was a lot less verbal communication there. There was a lot more sort of expressive communication, particularly by the little movements of the mouth.
By the mouth.
And he says that actually people's mouths back then could articulate more than they do now, and you could communicate a bunch by that. And so here he has heavenly angels, which are in that state that's similar. They do a lot of stuff around the mouth.
Yeah, and he says the wiring was even different, that the way that the brain was wired to the mouth, it was not wired in a way that, I want to lie, or I want to make it look like, I'm smiling because
Yes.
No, it wasn't set up for lying. It was set up for a kind of communication. And it's amazing if you see little newborns. It's funny when you take photos of newborns, you can hardly tell who they look like because their mouths are moving they have different expressions all the time. And I like to think there's a little hint of that in that newborn face. You can see that it's very expressive. And you don't have words from them to understand, like, what's wrong, sweetheart? Well, you can tell by looking at them. They're not having a good day right at this particular minute.
Diaper. Pooped in the diaper.
It's one of three things.
Well, and again, if you want to see, does the lore fit? Why are little babies like that, Jonathan Rose? It's because, according to Swedenborg, when we are infants, we are surrounded by heavenly angels.
Those highest
angels. Very same highest angels, many of whom were in this most ancient church, that's who's around us. That's what makes childhood like it is. And so you inherit some of the characteristics, or you express some of their characteristics.
And the entire history of the human race has been like the history of a single human being. And that's who we all, as a species, that's who we were early on.
Yeah.
And so we're like that when we're little, in this little individual manifestation that we are.
So you got that mouth talking thing going on. And as that's going on, or just after, angels start to regulate the thoughts of the person. And this is, again, a protection against evil spirits, harmful thoughts, or anything like that.
I love that somebody can do that. To go back to the operating room again, it's amazing that somebody can control your consciousness. And they can, they give you something here, this will slow your breathing, or this will take you into a different state. These angels possess that same kind of capability. Who can be trusted with that? It's amazing. Yeah. But they're to use those gifts for good, where they can control your thought.
Yeah.
I mean, this is another sci-fi thing that's been around for the last 100 years or something. But Swedenborg's talking about this hundreds of years ago.
Yes.
That they're doing this thought control for good.
Yeah.
For your good, for your protection.
Well, if it's an opt-in program, I opt in. Think about your thoughts. Hey, man, how have your thoughts been today? Are they good? Are you satisfied?
Oh, not all good.
Rate
no.
your thoughts. Rate your thoughts on Amazon. How many stars would you give them? Are you satisfied with the hey, this is going to be messed up. You're not going to go this. Look at that stupid person over there. All this stuff, year after year after year. If I could Neuralink to angels and say, can I tap into your
Can I just have
thoughts?
an hour?
I will do that.
Yeah.
I would do that.
Absolutely. Plug me in.
I noticed that at first the angels were checking to see whether my thoughts were like those of dying individuals who are normally thinking about eternal life.
Because it does strike me that this is a high volume business that they're in. I mean, dying is very popular. It happens, to tons of thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all the time dying. And so even though this is a very precious interaction with this one person, these are very experienced people.
Oh, there's standards.
Who are with you.
Yeah.
And so they know, out of the I guess by now it's 4.5 million people who I've helped to transition.
Yeah.
I would say easily 87% have this kind of thought at the time that they're dying.
Yeah. And
it's quite typical. You get some outliers, but that's quite
well,
typical.
you remember Jerry last year.
That's right. Oh man, that was something, wasn't it? We still talk about that.
How's he doing these days? So thoughts that were like those of dying individuals who are normally thinking about eternal life. They wanted to keep my mind in these thoughts. So that's good. You don't want to be thinking about the neighbors. You want to think about eternal life. I was later told that as the body is breathing its last, our spirit is kept in its final thought until it eventually comes back to the thoughts that flowed from our basic or ruling affection in the world. So your regular thoughts come back. But for a little while during the transition, it's got to be thinking about higher things.
And it's interesting that, because you're talking about all different kinds of people. These aren't just sort of saints and monks or something. Them too, but it's everybody. And so for somebody who you were in a car chase to try to get the jewels back from the person who stole them from you, who stole them from the other guy, or something like that.
Yes.
Still, the thought is just, I think I'm dying. I want to keep living. It seems like at its very least, there's an interest in I want life to continue. Yep. I'm not done.
Yeah. Or this is it. Or what was it all for? Some big kind of
something like that.
The end of the movie.
And so fascinating that they have the capability to just, we need to boop. It's like, where in some operations they have to flatline the heart for a while, right? Whoa. And then you start it again on the other side of the operation. But you,
I'm not doing that.
We need to flatline your thought right now and carry you over through this process.
I ain't doing that. Somebody else can do. Those doctors, if they want to do that, give them the money. I ain't doing that. No. Thanks, but no thanks.
No, that's right.
If I have a bad day at work and this podcast is dumb, we're all going to survive.
I don't think anybody does. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks everybody who goes and works hard at important medical things.
Yeah.
The idea was instilled in me that angels hold us in any thoughts we have at the moment of death that are devout and holy. I also gathered that when people are dying, most of them are thinking about eternal life. Few are thinking about their salvation or happiness. So the angels keep them in that thought about eternal life. The heavenly angels hold us in this thought quite a while before withdrawing and leaving us to the spiritual angels who then become our companions. Meanwhile, we fully, if dimly, believe that we are still alive in our bodies.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they need to use a thought that you're already having, like the best thought that they can't just sort of implant a thought.
Rules of the spiritual world. Harry Potter. Rules of the spiritual world alert. These are angels. You're sitting around with angels. Angels can just do anything, okay? Here's a thought. Thunk, put it. No.
Stick it in
They
your head.
have to.
No.
And this is another reason why. Can't God just make y'all good? Can't God just.
Yeah.
You'd think this is, if anything, God's got the deck stacked here. It's all his people all around you. He's going to be able to. He's still got to, like, what are you in your freedom? What do you got there?
Right.
It's still the interplay between God and freedom always.
So a few people are thinking about heaven.
Yeah.
A lot of people are thinking about life going on.
We got to work with what you got. That's
Yeah.
the reality for all of life.
That's
Why
it.
is the world like it is? We have to work with what you've got. Why is the dying process like? We're experts at teasing out what's good, bringing the best possible outcome. But the outcome bracket is limited by what you got.
Even though they're amazing at thought control,
Yeah.
and probably because of that,
Yeah.
they're not allowed to just put something in your head.
Can't. Yeah.
They've got to sift through what you've got, pick the best one, hold you in that.
Yeah.
How do they do it? That's amazing.
Okay. Meanwhile, we fully, if dimly, believe that we are still alive in our bodies, because not everyone's as lucid as Swedenborg was during this. You think like, oh, I didn't die. Oh, wait, I didn't die.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
It sounds to me like almost across the board, people don't realize they've died. And this is part of what I mean about the seeing your body go off on the exit ramp, that people think they are still in the same consciousness and the same world that they were in. And there's kind of a moment later after what we're talking about in this episode where they get informed that, oh no, you're not. You left the world. You died actually, and they don't even know it.
I got some news for you. You're dead. That's
Yeah.
probably about how it goes.
Yeah, right.
Then the part, so the angels have come. Angels have like helped your heart out. Then the spiritual angels, but then there's the part where they judge you, and they say, "This is all the bad stuff you've done. Hey, look at this. This person didn't measure up."
And I imagine they show you around to other people.
And they say, "Look at what
right,
this
to
guy
say,
did."
can you believe this night owl just walked in here?
Actually, they don't seem to even care about the bad things that you've done. This is what Swedenborg experienced. This is Secrets of Heaven 180. The heavenly angels sitting at my head remained with me for a while after I was revived, without speaking except in their silent way. From their thought speech, I learned that they completely discounted all my misconceptions and falsities.
Now, there's a couple things in there because, A, he's aware in their presence. I don't know whether he was before. I mean, he does seem like somebody who reflects on his own thinking. But it feels to me as though he's suddenly aware in the presence of these angels that, wow, I've been wrong about a lot of things. I mean, this was early in his process. He didn't know that much about the other world yet, you know, but who knows what all he's talking about. But not only is he wrong about a lot of things, and he can see that, but they can see it. They can see everything that's going on in his thought space.
Yeah.
They're aware of it. They're aware of the state of his mind, and they don't care at all that he has like half of everything completely wrong.
Well,
So
and look-
it's just nothing. It doesn't matter.
Look what it says right after that. So I learned that they completely discounted all my misconceptions and falsities. It was not that they ridiculed them. They appeared not to care about them at all. Again, if these are people who have seen a ton of people go through, you're just used to like, this guy's got this. Who cares? We're looking for what's good in
Okay.
here. Okay.
Yeah, this is a maniacal something, whatever.
All right.
Yeah.
They speak by thoughts without sound. This is the way they start to talk with souls whom they accompany in the beginning. And then finally, this is like sort of the end of the transition period. Like you're starting to wake up. You move from the heavenly angels to the spiritual angels, which are, again, we talked about before, the spiritual is the more mind-centered one. So you're starting to wake up and think and all that. There's this, as I said, the freedom is always there. Even after you've been awakened, you think here's your marching orders, this is where you go, but still you're in a state of freedom. Back to heaven and hell. When heavenly angels are with people who have been awakened, they do not leave them because they love everyone. But
everyone, even
your Aunt Martha. Or
that seems like a lack of discernment, doesn't it?
That's not fair at all. Because I was good, and that.
I know. Did you see that?
But some spirits are simply unable to be in the company of heavenly angels very long, and want them to leave. So if you're like blah blah, love everyone, I don't want that. Okay. They will leave. They'll if you want them to go, they'll go. But they're not going to leave you. That's the same way it is with God.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sad for them, because they probably wake up here. They're just lovingly. They love everyone.
Yeah.
They're lovingly taking care of them, welcoming them to this other reality.
Yeah.
And then people are like, ew. I'm out of here.
Not that they might not come around, but in that moment, it's like, this is a little bit much.
No, that's right. This isn't permanent.
Well, and even with kids, they're like, come on, Mom, Dad, get off of me.
Stop hugging me.
Yeah. Wrong. Like, you're that cute, but they're like, come on, get off me.
Get off.
People revived in this way by the heavenly angels are still experiencing a dim sort of life. When it is time to pass the people on to the spiritual angels, there's a system to it. The heavenly angels wait a little and then withdraw once the spiritual angels have arrived. I was also shown how the latter enable the reviving soul to receive the use of light.
Oh, okay. So there's a handoff. So we were talking about this heavenly kingdom and the spiritual. So there was angels from the heavenly kingdom. Now we're going to the spiritual kingdom. And so the heavenly kingdom just lovingly took care of you and bathed you in love and made sure their wordless, beautiful thoughts were communicated to your face and your mouth. Now you get handed to these spiritual angels, and they give you the benefit of light. Now, this is connected with this show in some way, isn't it?
Some people are going to rage and complain that this is a bait and switch because we're not actually reading the passage that has the phrase "off the left eye" in it. But this is exactly where it occurs.
It's next door. Like it's just coming up about 2 numbers later. Right?
So it says here, the spiritual angels enable the reviving soul to receive the use of light. In the heaven and hell version, I'm not sure if it's in the Secrets of Heaven, he says, when the spiritual angels came to him, they rolled a covering off my left eye, which gave me the use of spiritual sight.
That's right. And because of that idea of rolling back, if I may be so bold, this is where the name for the show came from, was the idea of wanting people to wanting to emulate that in some way where people could have some kind of spiritual light as a result of this show. So that's where this odd name of this show came from.
It is. Well, I mean, that's what we say now, because I think that probably is it. How it really happened in real life was I had heaven and hell. I was like, okay, we got to make a YouTube channel about Swedenborg. What open up this book. What's a cool phrase? Off the left eye. I like that. Turns out it was like there's good representation in it and everything.
Okay.
So
I fabricated why it was used.
No, but that I've the very thing you said is I've said that many times because now it's like, yeah, that's right. Off the left eye.
It is good. It's a very fitting. Yeah, what you picked quickly was inspired.
Must have been divine providence. So that's the story, everyone. Why is it called Off the Left Eye? It's because the angels seemed like they rolled a covering off of Swedenborg's eye. That's what allowed him to see spiritual things. What we're trying to do here now through the materials that we think that he says God showed him through experiences like this and everything else is like, here's how you can have the covering rolled off your own eye.
That's right. And until then, so Swedenborg is perceiving things. I mean, he said there were 2 angels near my head. There was more who were farther away. They were looking at my face. Like he's picking up all these what seem like visual details. And yet he also says that people going through this are in a dim state. Like I think you're kind of zoned out, it's kind of blissed out.
And I think Swedenborg is more aware of his surroundings than you or I would be, because this is not actually him dying. This is him being told ahead of time, you're going to get to go through the system. It's like Undercover Boss. You know, there's a show, Undercover Boss. Right. It's where the boss goes down and acts like his employee and nobody knows that he really is. Swedenborg, I think, was just like, you're going to go through the same system everyone else does, even though he's like tagged with this special mission of recording it. Or it's more like a secret shopper or a restaurant reviewer, where you go through the restaurant just like everyone else, but your job is to actually see what it's like and write about it for people back at home. He's like that.
That's right. So he's got a certain sort of mental recorder going. Like,
he's got that mental recorder that I think allows him to see those details that you don't. But I think the people processing him, like the angels and things, don't know. They're just it's just their regular customer service.
Here's another customer coming through.
When heavenly angels are present with the revived, they do not leave them. They love each one. But and this is him telling that same thing, but in Secrets of Heaven. If our soul is such that we can no longer enjoy the company of heavenly angels, we long to get away from them, at which point spiritual angels arrive and give us the gift of light. Until then, we do not have the use of our sight, only of our thoughts.
I've always wondered, isn't there anybody on the planet who just loves those highest angels and wants to stay with them as sort of one with them?
Yeah.
And what happens to them? Do they just never get light? Because the way Swedenborg describes it, you don't get light until you bump down to that next level, and then they give you light.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there is. Karadam.
Ah, yes.
If some of you may know her from our show.
Yeah.
I just think, like, if anyone's got a shot,
oh yeah,
it's going to be Karadam.
She said she wants that job of waking people up.
All right. So, man, this is the process. And if any of you want to read on and learn more about what comes next and next, if you want to read that passage with Off the Left Eye, you can go to Swedenborg.com, download Secrets of Heaven or Heaven and Hell for free. You can order the book if you want it. All proceeds go to support the Swedenborg Foundation. It's all right there. And that
Secrets of Heaven Volume 1.
Thank goodness it is. Because even to somebody who is awash in near-death experiences, and Swedenborg provides particular information that you don't get anywhere else, a comprehensive view of it, and also paints this picture of, okay, it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to be that bad, and there's an order to it, and there's much care taken over each of us. I mean, it's like, all right, when my time comes, I can handle that.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Because a lot of people feel drawn, but Swedenborg will tell you, I'll tell you what was the magnet at the end of that process. Or a lot of people encounter a being of unconditional love. Swedenborg will say, oh, those are angels from the heavenly kingdom who are filled with the presence of the Lord and that kind of thing.
And the theory is that the divine is the source of all the order in the universe. So the way things are, especially when they are the way they are intended to be, is more and more a reflection of God and who God is. So the more we learn about these processes, the more you get to see the nature of God. So you see, like, don't worry, everybody's comforted, everyone's cared for, we're taking great care to make sure you get to where you go, we're never going to lead you. This is all info on how God is and how God feels about each individual person.
Yes, and sort of a God's eye view of death. That death is actually a beautiful thing. It's a gentle transition. You're at peace, and you feel fine. Terrible for people who are left behind or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know families of people who go through something awful are just tormented by the thought of what were their final moments like. They just can't bear it, Yeah. And if they knew, they were in a blissful place. They were in great company.
God's eye view of death, and hopefully gives you God's eye view of life a little bit.
Yes.
As you all go. Thanks everyone for watching with us. Jonathan, this has been such a pleasure.
Oh yeah.
As always.
The time has flown by.
I know, right? We just got started, and here we are. If you want to support the channel, don't forget, become a member. Click that join button that supports us. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.